when we meet with customers, it's very business focused. So what are the business drivers, the needs that you and your organization are looking to accomplish with IT services, and develop those with you and bring the best technologies to bear to solve what problems are most pertinent to you within your organizations. So we have a lot of partnerships, and we're going to get into some of those product sets, but it's very customer focused. It's what business needs are we trying to accomplish, and mobility and end user computing have been a very mature solution set for us for a long time here at Ahead. One Eric mentioned earlier is as part of our solution evolution, end user computing was foundational to a lot of the design and consulting and implementation work we've done. Started with Citrix and VMware implementations. We've matured into the mobility management space, so helping organizations adopt true mobile services, mobile application development, getting into the identity management space and single sign-on. So how do I federate out the different services within the enterprise? So I'm going to start with what we're topic of today's discussion, which is really, desktop as a service. So the concept has been out there for a long time, and 3-4 years ago, customers would ask us, and we would say, desktop as a service is a challenge in a large enterprise. Where do my applications sit? What is the latency between the user and the desktop? How do I help adopt this solution? So what we've seen is now a transition to cloud-first initiatives. So customers are leveraging Amazon, Azure, cloud services throughout the industry. As applications and workloads move, the desktop is naturally going to follow. And from a technology standpoint, what we've built with, foundationally desktop application and desktop virtualization and application virtualization, we're bringing that to and leveraging the benefits of cloud services. So, definition of desktop as a service is nothing fancy, but basically public cloud hosted desktops that you as an organization can consume, simplified management, all of the things Jeff Barr mentioned earlier around Amazon's fundamental design and architecture principles, taking that to where the desktop has traditionally been. So specifically, what the solution is from Amazon is defined is named Amazon WorkSpaces. And WorkSpaces is a traditional approach at managing and brokering virtual desktops. So think about as a user comes on board, and I'm traditionally provisioning them a physical PC or a physical desktop, and they're going to sit in this cubicle. That's just not the way that IT is designed anymore, and not the business need that the users are asking of us. So the Amazon WorkSpaces service is truly trying to simplify that whole process, provide what users are needing to do their day job effectively, what applications, what workloads, but then the ability to work from anywhere. So a very diverse physical footprint from a device standpoint is supported, delivering a high-fidelity user experience to the end user. The protocol to deliver this service is PC over IP, so if you're familiar with Teradici and what they've done in the protocol space, PC over IP has been around for a long time. It's a very mature protocol. So developing and implementing these types of solutions is all about providing a performant, scalable, and simplified desktop experience. So Amazon is leading that in that space today. And what we're helping customers do is take a look at how do we help adopt these in the enterprise. So the traditional challenges that so many organizations face nowadays are just really around physical device procurement and management of assets. So where are assets? What's their current life cycle? How do I decommission? When an employee leaves the organization, what do I do with their desktop? Does it go into a closet somewhere? Do they send it back? Do they keep it? A lot of organizations have gotten away from how do I procure and manage physical assets anymore? So the value of virtual desktop or virtual first on the desktop side is I just don't want to be in the physical desktop business anymore. I want to get out of the physical desktop business holistically. So to do that, seamless access is available to me. So I can, as a user, access resources remotely, whether I'm in the office, whether I'm at home, whether I'm at a coffee shop. Seamless access is essentially one of the asks from every business today. So bring your own desktop is a really nice offering that a lot of customers can offer their new hires and say, hey, if you've got a laptop or if you've got something at home already, we can give you a stipend. Bring a resource in here, and we can give you a virtual desktop with all the business applications that you need. Security is foundational to all of the virtual desktop and application conversations we've had in the past 10 years. Is it secure? How can I help get data back into the data center? And desktop as a service solves that problem for us as well. So I'm securing the data by leveraging a platform like Amazon Web Services and back-end infrastructure to host all of the user content, but securing the channel from where the desktop sits to the end user device, and then essentially being able to control the life cycle of that device. So not just giving somebody a desktop for the sake of it, but actually controlling and securing what they have access to and being able to life cycle that more effectively. And then one of the other design criteria Amazon has with all their services is scalability. So with WorkSpaces, day one I can spin up 1 to 5 workspaces, where in a matter of clicks I'm up to 100 desktops. Now I'm scaling to hundreds of thousands of desktops. So it's linear scaling, and along with that comes linear billing. So from an overview standpoint, I touched on some of these benefits, but essentially when I moved to a desktop as a service model, I have this concept of pay-as-you-go. So traditional IT spend is a large CapEx investment, even if I'm on the virtual side. So if I'm leveraging an on-prem VDI deployment, I have to spend a decent amount of money to get up and running from a design and architecture and implementation standpoint, test it, make sure performance is where I need it to be, and then I finally start getting to worry about the applications. So if I can leverage a solution like Amazon WorkSpaces, I'm up and running in less than a week, and I'm only paying for what users are actually consuming. So a totally different consumption model when you think about desktops as a service versus traditional IT or a physical asset procurement process. Scale up and down in minutes. So I can have access to who is using what, and if they're not using that asset, or if they're no longer with the organization, quickly recoup that, no longer paying for it. So flexibility up and down, and also infinite scale theoretically, but a lot of different paradigm shifts when you move to a SaaS offering and also desktop as a service offering. WorkSpaces is also a persistent experience. So users have the flexibility, if you're allowing them to install their own applications, store data, store files on it, manage it like they would a physical desktop. So a lot of challenges you get in the non-persistent traditional VDI space with, you don't want to provide admin rights, you don't want to allow users to customize it too much, because as soon as that happens, then you have to back it up, you have to maintain a user state, you have to do all these complex activities that we can solve. However, if you give them a persistent desktop, some of that goes away. So persistent desktops, users, if you're allowing them to, can install their own applications. And as I mentioned, security is foundational. So WorkSpaces as a service is built on all the underlying Amazon services that Jeff Barr mentioned earlier. So you're getting the benefits of reliability, scalability, but then all the security foundational elements that Amazon brings to market with all their different product sets. So cloud-hosted desktops as a service, it's a quick overview of what we're trying to provide. And this is a decent and a quick introduction to one of the ways that, if your enterprise is considering moving towards cloud services, this is one of the solutions that's available to you, and one of that I personally feel like is one of the easiest to adopt. So I am familiar with managing applications, I'm familiar with managing desktops. The challenge is really finding the right users. So if I am looking today, I want to go after the easy, the low-hanging fruit we always refer to it as, but who are the right users to give this service to day one, so I can get familiar with, 1, the consumption model, 2, the billing, and 3, how I would manage it within the enterprise. So anybody that's a BYOD desktop today, this is a very easy transition to get them up and running with your corporate image, your applications, and what your desktop footprint looks like. With the pay-as-you-go model, temporary workers are also a no-brainer. So I basically now have a asset that I can provision and lifecycle and maintain within my data center, but is not something that I'm have to depreciate over 3 or 5 years if that's a physical desktop that I would be provisioning them. Any dev test workload, so the journey to the cloud, we always talk about take the dev test environment and move it. Can I give them a desktop that accesses that environment is also a natural progression. So anything that I'm considering moving to Amazon today, give them a desktop to go access that, rather than having them try to figure out how I get to these resources. Is it a different consumption model from a user standpoint? Where do I click? Give them this desktop, and that's their entry point into their dev test environment. Call centers are also a really nice use case. So USB redirection, bidirectional audio, any USB devices that are headset or microphone driven are all supported with Amazon WorkSpaces. So call centers are a natural one of those where a lot of turnover, a lot of new user onboarding, just an easy way to get in the marketplace here and to use this service quickly. So, and we always talked about, I came from an organization that was essentially all they did, their whole business was mergers and acquisitions. So they would go out, identify organizations across the country, and just integrate with their systems, provide them a desktop resource. And to do that is very complex, and the management and time it takes to kind of get them up and running. Are you doing all this back-end, collapsing multiple domains? What are their standard applications versus what are our standard applications? Giving them a desktop that gets them onto your business systems day one is something that we're seeing a huge amount of interest and traction around. So as you are looking to merge with other companies or combine companies, this is something that you can also take advantage of quickly that, I might have a 3-month runway to get their applications available on our systems. This is a temporary type solution that I can get up and running quickly. So as I mentioned, these are the easy use cases. These are the organizational benefits that you can provide to your users and back to the business. So when you leave here today, back to Eric Kaplan's theme of take something home with you, how can I potentially leverage this solution in my environment? I would say that within your enterprise and within your ecosystem of technology, this is a relevant solution for, I'd say a lot more users than you would traditionally think, or at least that we thought about 3-4 years ago with desktop as a service. So why is the right time what is the right timing for desktop as a service, and how is it relevant today? It's one of those solutions that doesn't add complexity to how we manage desktops. This actually simplifies the way that you consume this workload. So it's very workflow driven. This is the admin console. This is the entire presentation portal for how I provision and access and see what's running in my environment. So it's intuitive and it's simple, and it's one of those things that traditionally I don't want to bring on this tool. It's going to take too much time to get it running. This changes that whole discussion where I, as an organization, can leverage this solution and be up and running in less than a week if I'm not even an Amazon customer today. So creating an AWS account, spinning up some very simple architecture, getting machines on my Active Directory, and being able to use a lot of the same tools that I have today. And I put this up here, so log into provisioning. So as an administrator, if I have a new user coming on board and I'm doing this completely manual today, I'm provisioning them a desktop in less than 10 clicks. So out of the box, from when I log in, click through the admin console 10 times, and I've got a workload up and running and provisioning. So think about the way that you manage desktops today and how you provision assets. This is a totally different paradigm shift from what you've been doing, especially if you're on a physical model, a physical desktop footprint today. So how do I get this up and running? So the way I like to discuss the architecture is looking at the screen. On the left-hand side, I've got my AWS cloud environment. This is my VPC, so my virtual private cloud. And if you think about having a remote data center available to your IT administration, that's what we're building here on the left side. And I've got on the right-hand side what is my traditional data center and all the enterprise tools that I've got at my disposal. So at the very bottom, Active Directory, so I can connect my virtual private cloud environment and the Amazon workspaces that I provision, have them sit on my Active Directory and have them be managed under OU structure and GPOs that I'm familiar with. I can also roll out a on-prem MFA architecture, so a multi-factor authentication solution. Any applications that I've got running in my data center, so whether they're web-based or client-based, those applications, the FAT client that would go onto my desktop, can still sit on my workspace. And I've got layer 2 connectivity. So again, thinking about a remote data center availability, I have access to all the applications that are internal already. So thinking about getting up and running quickly, this is not something that, if you put in the foundation and the plumbing phase to get this working, not something that takes a whole lot of time and a whole lot of net new design or architecture. So one of the things that I did want to call out on the Amazon VPC side from a configuration standpoint, so stream management. So from your VPC, you can route traffic back and have users connect on-prem if you're in your own office, in your own data center, on your local area network, or you can have them access this through the public internet. So from a PC over IP standpoint, a protocol that's optimized for wide area networks and say 100 millisecond latency type connections, this is a lot of just a different way to think about accessing local resources that are in your data center. So that's all well and good, and Amazon is awesome. We know the benefits. We know how simple it is. We all want to leverage it in our organizations, but I've got all these enterprise tools. How do I use those to manage workspaces and make those an effective solution? So SCCM. So everyone's got, or most, I should say, most people have SCCM today. They're packaging applications, and they're using that to distribute applications to their users. So use SCCM. Build an SCCM server in your VPC and use that as a distribution point for having users install applications and manage those. You can also use group policy. So the way that you control and maintain and manage the user experience from a GPO standpoint, still use those. Because I'm now using an Active Directory connector, GPOs are available to me to manage the user experience. And a lot of our customers today have some sort of application presentation service running within their organization. So if you've got Citrix Zen app running already today, or if you're a Horizon Suite customer, put the client on your workspace, and now you've enabled enterprise applications day one into your workspace. So use what you've got. And again, where are the easy use cases? Use the tools I'm familiar with, so it's not an overwhelming burden to get up and running quickly. So the next step is really, okay, I've got my dev test workloads, I'm using workspaces, but how do I enable workspaces across my entire organization? Application management, what are the big challenges that I'm seeing? So there's really 4 key points I'm gonna go through, and the first is automation and orchestration. So as simple as it is, 10 clicks from login to provisioning, that's still not good enough at scale. So what we need to do is provide a true automation and orchestration platform. And what we've built here at Ahead and using what Nicole here showed you and what we've got at the booth is a ServiceNow workflow that an HR specialist or a hiring manager would log into and provision workspaces, provision, based on your department, what applications you would get what you would see in SCCM, automating Active Directory entitlements, essentially orchestrating the entire process of onboarding a new user. So that's all workflow driven and based on what we've done of ServiceNow. So there's a lot of other automation and orchestration tools that are out there. This is foundational to being able to adopt the benefits of true Amazon workspaces and desktop as a service. We want to be able to automate and simplify that onboarding process as well. So the next problem is Windows applications. So anybody that's been in IT for a long time knows that Windows apps are terrible. They basically are the crux of any EUC engineer's existence. We're going to see memory leaks, we're going to see hung processes, we're going to see failures. How do we provide application management now that we've got this robust platform that's easy to use and simple to manage? So application layering is one of those challenges or one of those solutions that we're bringing to, along with this enterprise challenge and how we solve for this problem. What we want to do is take what we've built in SCCM and create for better or worse, it's an application package. And there's multiple file formats, but what happens at the end of the day is I have now a VHD file that users, when they log into their workspace, is actively being attached to their session. So I now have a base Windows image that's maintained and life-cycled when Windows patches come out, but I'm also managing the applications that are specific to that user. So layering brings a very wide range of flexibilities to not only, provide a way to present applications to users based on their job role, but also lifecycle and manage. So I can iterate individual application packages and assign those to users very dynamically based on a bunch of different conditions and filters and where they are. If they're at home, I might want to give them a different application footprint than when they're in the office. So a lot more control when I have an application layering solution at my disposal. One of the other biggest challenges we see in the traditional EUC space when I'm deploying virtual apps and desktops at scale is users want to use a system that feels like their own, that they can personalize and they can make changes to. And I want those changes to follow me, whether, if I'm using an Amazon workspace today, if I go back to my physical desktop for whatever reason, I want those settings, that application changes that I've made, the customizations that I care about, I want to provide that same look and feel. So how do I maintain that persistence and that personalization that users really care about? I've heard from a couple organizations recently that application performance is fantastic. The virtual desktop is screaming because it's on all-flash array. We've solved the challenge of making sure we've got the right applications for the right users, but we don't allow them to personalize it, so the user just doesn't use it. And I can throw all this money at the solution, and I can do all these things around architecture and design, but if the user isn't going to use it, and usually the personalization piece is the one that's missing, is give the user something that they can customize and they can make it feel like their own. And then how do you operationalize the solution? So how do I take the tools I've got at my disposal or a net new solution and enable the help desk to solve challenges with that? So we're seeing a lot of traction around enabling the help desks to do in-guest OS monitoring. So like we mentioned, Windows apps are the problem. We need to enable the help desk to be able to support this operating system if it's hosted in Amazon or even if it's hosted on-prem. The applications are always going to be the hard part, and users, as soon as they get a slow experience or an application isn't working, the natural progression is to say, well, my Amazon workspace is slow. I don't want to use a cloud desktop anymore. I don't want to do this anymore because it's not meeting my needs. And Amazon Workspace or your cloud desktop as a service solution would get a bad name. That's what's happened with a lot of our traditional EUC partners, is the solution becomes stale and it becomes difficult to manage. So we want to be able to maintain and be able to solve problems quickly and put that in the hands of the help desk. It's not an escalation if it's a virtual desktop anymore. So how do we help solve that problem? So what we're doing for customers, and as I wrap up, really it's around figuring out who the right users are day one and enabling them to be effective. With our prescriptive approach, we're essentially saying if you're going to Amazon or if you're going to use cloud services, here are the right use cases. We talked about the easy use cases for desktop as a service, but the entire life cycle. So how do I define a strategy for desktop management and cloud-hosted desktops versus how do I actually operationalize it? And then how do I get charged for that? How do I track what I'm using, and how do I consolidate when there is something that is stale out there? How do I find out where I can recoup that asset and not pay for that if it's not being used? So a lot of different approaches to this, and we offer a lot of different, from an executive briefing, come in and learn about it more, but yeah, training and how it works and how you would bill for this type of solution. So partners, in the application layering space, I mentioned there's a lot of different solutions out there that can solve this problem. We're seeing a lot of traction with Liquidware Labs and their FlexApp product to create a package that can be distributed to multiple users, providing single image management. We also see a ton of different automation and orchestration products. As we mentioned, the booth is demoing what we've done with ServiceNow to onboard users, full lifecycle management of that solution, and being able to provide them what they need day one. And that's all workflow driven from, so the HR team doesn't have to kick it over or take a ticket and provision it to multiple teams. That process that you go through, that we want to simplify that whole stream. And then I also wanted to mention Control Up from an in-guest OS monitoring standpoint. Interesting things they're doing to enable the help desk to solve problems. So if there is a process that I'm seeing, how do I get alerted to that? And how can I go remediate that quickly? Is it restarting a service? Is it killing a process? We want to put those tools in the hands of the help desk. So a lot of different partners. We are internally investing and spending a ton of time on evaluating what each of these partners are doing, each of these manufacturers are doing, and which one is going to best solve the challenges that you're going to have as you move to a desktop as a service model. And as I wrap up, what I wanted to kind of end with is AHEAD and the end user computing team that I'm fortunate enough to represent today is we've got a ton of experience in this space. So we started in the on-prem business. We've been developing complex solutions for our customers. This is multi-site deployment using very modern techniques on how do we manage user experience and how do we enable customization. Managing Windows applications, using SCCM or new features. Come talk to us and figure out where this solution fits versus what you're doing today. And as I mentioned, the easy users are usually the ones that we're going to focus on, but how do you get to the next step? How do you help lifecycle some of the legacy tools you've got? How do you get to the modern age of true desktop as a service and using application management and these types of modern feature sets to get you where you want to be as an organization? So if you haven't been to the AHEAD booth or haven't been by the ServiceNow booth, as like I mentioned, we want to show you what we've done so you can see how you can use these in your enterprise. Also, briefings are the best way to come in and see this technology in action and talk about how you solve problems for your users. So if you haven't done that yet, please reach out to your AHEAD account reps, talk to us, get scheduled, come into the office. We've got a huge team of EUC experts that we can bring to bear to talk about what you're doing versus what Amazon Workspaces provides.